should be live now.
Okay.
And Ms. Garrett's back. You ready, Ms. Garrett? Okay, I think everybody is ready. And I read the standard that we operate under for the first phase of this, Mr. Harper. So that's your burden and duty. And we're going to hear from you. Let me just make sure that we're talking about the same issues. I have a statement here that our staff prepared, and it says that the total value that the county is continuing, and we'll get into the breakdowns, I'm sure, as we go forward, but is $2,101,700. And Mr. Harper, you contend it ought to be $1,600,000 for the first parcel. And
No, I don't remember. I don't remember making any numbers like that. Somebody did that. They made them up. I haven't given any numbers like that.
well, it would have been on your appeal, I thought, but we'll go back and look. The second one they have down for $898,000, and we have that your opinion was $590,000. So
You got to understand that part of that's under appeal for being in a flood zone.
well, I understand that, but
So I don't know how to compute taxes in a flood zone. I don't know how to compute that, so I couldn't do that.
Mr. Pelfrey, did the notice of appeal, can you find it before I do? And I guess here's the commission file and see if that came off the notice of appeal.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the last few pages of what I have bundled together as the commission file, and I see an AV-14 for one parcel. I guess the lower valued parcel, indicating it's signed by Mr. Harper, so I assume it's his opinion of value of $590,000. And then there's another one similarly signed that says $1,600,000 for the other parcel.
Okay. Mr. Harper, we have those figures down, and it's something that you submitted and signed when you appealed. Do you see those? Do you have those before you?
No, I don't. I've got, we need to start with this thing because we're going to end up at the end of this thing with a triangle back here. And the triangle, what I'm looking for that thing to be not any value at all. So what I need to do, I like to get started from the beginning to just go through this whole thing, and then we can sort it out as we go along.
All right. Well, that's in the record, so we'll see as we go along then, and where we come out. What we do in these matters, Mr. Harper, I'm going to ask you to give a short statement of what your contention is as to how the county got this wrong. And then we'll have a short statement from the county as to what they contend, and that they will try to show that they got it correct. And then we'll go into the evidence, and you'll get to present your estimate of your evidence. And that's, of course, that's testimony. And then the county would have a chance and an opportunity to present their evidence. And so that's kind of how we will proceed from here. So, and we have the documents that the county has filed, and we have the documents that you've filed, and those are the exhibits. Let me ask, is there any objection to any of the exhibits, Mr. Meeker, from Mr. Harper?
Well, yes, Mr. Chairman, there is a soils report by an engineer, and that apparently the engineer is not here, so it can't be cross-examined. And also that report deals with a part of the site that's already developed. So I'm not sure, but that only goes to the materiality of it. But typically if the expert is not present, the report is not admitted.
All right. Well, we'll cover that when we get to it. If we do, and I note your objection, we'll rule on that. Mr. Harper, do you have any objections to any of the exhibits by the county?
No, not a bit.
Okay. And so,
well, first thing you got to understand, this appraisal that was done that the county paid, the tax people paid to do, that thing is under appeal to the North Carolina Appraisal Board. That thing has got a lot of exaggerations and falsehoods in it, and it's appealed to Tom Lewis, the North Carolina Appraisal Board, and the appraisal officer that's appraising is Gene Jordan. Now, those are the two gentlemen from the North Carolina Appraisal Board, and this protest is in their hands.
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to let you do a short statement of what your contentions. And as far as the appraisal and the things that you think are wrong with it, you can call Ms. Patton if you would like to put her on as an adverse witness, or whatever you want to do. It's your case, or.
Well, I've got facts. I got facts. What I'm dealing with her, I'm just going to state some facts. That's all I'm going to do.
All right. Well, just give us a brief kind of opening statement of what you intend to try to show, and then we'll do the same thing from the county, and then we'll let you get into your evidence. Okay.
We're going to have three things we're going to deal with. First thing, you got to understand that 176 coming out of Hendersonville is in actually two parts. If you go down to 176 West, you're into really everything that Patton's described as the restaurants. They got Chick-fil-A's, they got all that stuff. They've got drugstores, they got three big grocery stores. But now when you go on 176, when you go in the other direction, you go east, as you cross the top of the hill at the railroad bridge, it's exactly like going from San Diego to Tijuana, Mexico. When you cross that bridge, you see these pictures I sent in there that you got one building out here, it's an old feed and seed store that's got old auto parts in it. You go down there and you're going to find a car dealership closed up. You see the garage, the pictures I sent you, that's got the checkerboard front, that's an old garage closed up. You got a closed up car dealership down there. You got a bank that's closed up. And then when you look at all the signs out here, or have got for sale signs on. Now, to show you how wrong they are, her comps on her appraisal are just made up. But the county wanted her to match a $2 million number, and that's how she did it. She pieced together some stuff. She's got one area out here is 4.5 acres as a comp in Fletcher, North Carolina. That's not here. She got another one down there, and another one 1.4 in Arden. That's not out here. She got one at 2.6 out in Mills River. That's not a good comp. She got one at 0.47 and a 1.19. Those are the comps she used. That's just fictitious. And where you really see what she's up against, when you look at the very end of her thing, it says conclusion. I want you to listen to this conclusion. The location of the subject in Hendersonville with good proximity. Now, when you say proximity, that can mean anything. To a shopping and service in a growing market that is steadily activity. This place has been going downhill. I've been here for 48 years, and I've seen businesses die and go out and close up. And it says it's a stable increase in property value. The property value is the only place increasing is down at the tag office. In reality, that they haven't. I'm gonna give you some comps, some real comps that happen right here, right on this road. If you go out here, we got one of them. And this is in the last few years now. I got one here. They had an acreage of 4.1 acres. The land value of the county had it at $1,045,000. All right. It was bought for $835,000. That shows you an example how far off they are. But I got another one here. That they had it built at $793,000. It was bought for $500,000. That gives you an example. Now, she didn't use these comps. She used some comps out in Mills River someplace that's not even in town. Now we've gone through that. Now we're going to get into flooding. If you go up at the top of the hill, there's an O'Reilly parking lot. There's over an acre in that parking lot. All the water, you got the pictures, all the water that comes off that thing goes down and crosses over the road and hits the ditch on Old Spartanburg Highway. It follows that ditch along my property until it comes to this sidewalk.
Mr. Harper?
Yeah.
Mr. Harper? I'm sorry, mine was muted and I was trying to get your attention. Didn't realize I was muted. We're going to get into those items when you do your evidence. Right now, we're just into the part where you're kind of giving us a overview of what your evidence will show. So, and you'll be able to call the appraiser if you want to, or the county witnesses if you want to, but, and give us um, your evidence. Let me, I think you indicated that you didn't have any objections to the county's exhibits. We'll deem those admitted, and we'll admit your exhibits, I think, except Mr. Meeker, you wanted to object to the soil report. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, the other exhibits are deemed admitted. All right, Mr. Harper, you gave us some idea of what your evidence will show. I need to hear from Mr. Meeker, we do, as to what he'll contend the county will show, and then we'll get back to your evidence. But anything else in your opening statement that you want us to
Well, I'd
know?
like to finish it. One more thing. We got 3 items. I've
Okay,
given you the description of the property. We're gonna get into my flooding. Now that triangle back there, I don't know how he could turn that down. That's a certified civil engineer that did a soil test. Now, I don't know how you can turn that down when it's, what would it take? You tell me what I gotta do to get you a soil test that you'll accept, and I'll do the soil test, whatever you want. You just tell me.
all right. We'll, let's hear from Mr. Meeker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, my name is Charles Meeker, and I'm representing Henderson County in this case. The date of valuation in this case is January 1, 2019. So this is the 2019 reappraisal cycle in Henderson County. There are 2 parcels involved here. The first is located at 1086 Spartanburg Highway. If I can ask you and the commissioners to look at Exhibit 3 in the commission's hearing book, that's about an inch thick book with a black binder. But look at Exhibit 3 in the page that's numbered 4. It's actually a page in, it's 4 or 5 pages in, but it's numbered 4 at the bottom. There's an aerial photo that shows you this 4.5 acre commercial parcel. So if I can ask you all to look at that. Assuming you're there on page 4, you can see the building 1, building 2, and the excess land. Each of those parcels is approximately 1.5 acres. And the main highway, the Spartanburg Highway, is out front, which is a major highway in the area. Buildings 1 and 2, they're actually buildings on those site, and where the building 2 marker is the area where the soil question is, where that site's already developed, and the fact that there may be some fill in there, doesn't impact the use of that site. So that's the first parcel. It's assessed at $2,101,700. The appraisal here comes in at $2,020,000, about 4% less, but it's very close. The second parcel is 1108 Spartanburg Highway, and it's sort of the other piece that's right next to the excess land there. In fact, if you turn to Exhibit 6, you can see an aerial photograph of that. And as you can see, that is the other parcel that's together. It is slightly over an acre. It's been assessed at $898,000 and appraised at $930,000. So that's the second parcel, and there are two buildings on that site. The appraisal there is about 3.5% or 4% more than the assessment. So in one case, the appraisal is a little bit less. In this case, a little bit more. Henderson County believes that these parcels are correctly assessed, and that's been confirmed by the appraisals. Mr. Harper has raised issues about water or the area of town or this soils issue. Henderson County believes that those have been taken into account in the assessment and the appraisals, and that they don't mean the value, this property should be valued as floodplain or be exempt or have no value, as has been contended recently by Mr. Harper. In terms of the county witnesses, the first will be Kevin Hensley. He's a real estate appraiser for Henderson County, and he will talk about the assessments. The second is Terry Patton, an experienced appraiser in Henderson County, who will present her appraisals. Now, as Mr. Harper referenced, he has filed a complaint with the appraisal board, which the county and I believe Ms. Patton also thinks is not appropriate. In any event, that complaint has not been ruled on yet, and we anticipate there'll likely be, we hope it'll be dismissed early next year, but that's not the way to criticize appraisals, to file a complaint. In any event, we intend to present the evidence, and we believe the commission will see when it reviews these that the appraisals are correct in all respects. So with that, we look forward to hearing the case.
All right, thank you, Mr. Meeker. Well, as the issue of any complaint that's been filed regarding the appraisal, I'll rule that that's not material at this stage. Mr. Harper, you can question her about the appraisal and point out what you contend are deficiencies, but we're not going to get into anything that deals with any complaints you might have filed or what's going on at that.
She well knows what she did.
Okay. All righty. Let's start, Mr. Harper, and you can present your evidence. We have your exhibits here, so you tell us now what you want us to know about this property and those two parcels.
All right, we'll go back and finish up on this area out here. I've been out here for 48 years, and I've seen this area gradually deteriorate and go down, and it goes, the businesses close up, people leave, car dealerships close up. And you go out the road out here, and I sent you pictures of for sale signs. Everything out here is for sale. And that nobody, the tax burden has gone up and the property value has gone down. And I gave you two comps there that had been given when that time, and you can see something that they've got taxed at 793,000, and it's bought for 500. That demonstrates right there what's going on out
Now
here.
you need to, Mr. Harper, you need to point out where you are so we can find out exactly what you're talking about now.
Well,
And this is the under oath part of our.
You should
case.
have it in my folder that I sent you. You should have those two comps in there. They're from Hendersonville, the tax department. You got one of them's for $1 million and one of them for 793,000. You should have two of them. It should be in that folder.
Well, let's see. I see a 793,200 on a sheet. I guess it's
Right,
maybe
bought
the,
for 500. Yeah, look at right below it. It's what it was bought for.
I see an indication of bought 500,000. Is that the one you're talking
Right.
about?
That's
Okay.
exactly what I'm talking about.
All right,
Now
talk
that's
about
a
that
real,
one, and
that's
you
a
can point
real
out the other
world
one.
comp. Yeah, that's not like Patton did out in Mills River someplace. That's right here. That's about a quarter of a mile, half mile down the road from here. I mean, it's real comp from right here. Now, the thing that you got to understand, this whole area has been going downhill. It's been, you can go down and see for the for sale signs put out there. Nobody wants to be out here, but it's lucky that the guy's gonna put a car wash down here on one of them. But once he got in there, it's a flood problem anyway. I'm not gonna get into that. Now, we're gonna get into some flooding. That's the next thing is a flood deal. If you go to the top of the hill, there's an O'Reilly
Well, wait a
parking lot.
minute. Let me ask you this. You said there's two comps. That's
Well,
one. Is there another
Okay,
one?
got two. There's another one right there with it. You should have one. You should be another one. And
Is
it's
that
at the bottom
exhibit
of,
2 or no, that's the soil method.
there's another one should be, was billed at $1,045,000.
All right, let's see if we can identify that. All right, I see, and then down at the bottom, is that your note?
83,000 is what it's, that's what it was,
835,000?
835,000. Yeah, that's what it was bought for.
All right, now I think we know the two that you're talking about. Anything else you want to tell us about those two?
Well, no, that's it. I mean, what I'm telling you, those are real world comp. If you look at Patton and you go out here and talking about Fletcher and Mills River and Arden, I mean, they're not even in the same town. But that's what she's done. Her job was to match the closest she could get to the 2 million that the county had. And she's piecemealed this thing together to come up with that. That's the reason I've appealed it to the appraisal board.
Well,
When you
I
start
mentioned that
taking,
we're not going to get into that, Mr.
all right,
Harper.
let's move on to flooding. We'll move on to flooding. That's the second thing.
Okay,
You start at the top of the hill at the O'Reilly parking lot. It's over an acre in a parking lot. Every drop of water that falls on that parking lot goes down their lower driveway. It goes across the street, the old Spartanburg Highway now, and it goes in front of Fastenal City Electric in that ditch. Now that ditch been there for 150 years. As it goes down, the water goes down that ditch, been doing it for years. All right, it goes down, the county decide they want to build a sidewalk. All right, they did not confer with the city. Now they're in the county. Now, the city has got an ordinance on building sidewalks. They tell you everything you want to know on the sidewalks. And if you look at the thing, the sidewalk, the second paragraph on that thing says clean and maintain existing storm drains. That sounds pretty clear now, don't it? if you look at the picture
Now,
I
that's
sent
one of your
you,
exhibits I think you're talking about. Is that
right, we
correct?
got it, you got the picture. This is the flood exhibit.
But I
It's
mean,
got,
what the
you see
regulation
the,
is, I think I saw something in the
you,
packet.
you see the picture where the water is coming down that ditch and it hits that sidewalk and it abruptly turns and goes across and beside I share a property with a Henderson County, I'm gonna call it the health department. It's the Department of Human Services. Health departments know what I'm talking about. From the health department and follows our line and go right through my store. Now you got pictures of us cleaning out the floor. Now this comes on it's been going on. I go back to when they first put the sidewalk in. When they first put the sidewalk in, we didn't at the beginning get any real flooding because we're in a kind of a dry area there for a couple of years. When we got back to a normal rainfall, boy, here it came. We're getting 2 or 3 times a year, we're getting flooded out. Now I go to the county commission, went down there twice, took them pictures, showed them everything. And they didn't want anything to do with that. So I've done that twice. I went to the city because the city wrote the sidewalk ordinance that says clean and maintain existing storm drains. The city did not enforce that ordinance and let them do it. Now this has been flooded. It's been going on for 7, 8 years, and it's cost me all kinds of money. What'll make you sick is come here in the morning and you got water running out your front door. Now you lost 4 hours. Everybody's mechanics. Nobody can work. We're out here with the mops and buckets and getting the water swept through here. If it floods during the day, we can kind of force it, let the water go through the building, and we can kind of control it. I'm just telling you what we have to live with this flood, not to mention the lost inventory, 150, 200,000, something like that. But anyway, that's what we've had to deal with. And it's been, the insurance companies won't cover anything that's man-made. All right, now we're gonna go back up here to the thing. When this insurance, when our tax thing started, now they wanted to do something. So the engineer comes out here and you see those pictures there, that big black pipe sticking up out of the ground. Now don't ask me what that's all about because I know we were flooding out and I had a mechanic was down there trying to hold that thing underwater, get enough water to go through and keep from flooding the business again. All right, and we complained about that. Now I called Michael Edney, the chairman of the county commission. He will not return a call to me. No way. All right, now when the next thing they did, they dug a hole and they put a metal storm grate or drain in the bottom of the hole. Well, that sounds pretty good, except when they cut the grass and it rained. Well, the grass couldn't plug that thing up. It flooded just as bad as it ever did. Now the sidewalk, if you look at that sidewalk, that's the only sidewalk anywhere on the old Spartanburg Highway. It goes from one edge of the Henderson County property to the other edge. And that's it's the only sidewalk. And nobody uses it. And if you look at it, it's the only sidewalk you ever saw. It's flush with the road. And I went out to the DOT and the DOT said, well, they couldn't do anything because it was the county. And that's where we're on that. Now on that triangle that you see right there, I got an engineer, a civil engineer, to give you a thing, and what they're doing, that's a bog in that triangle. If you take the right of way from the high tension power line, if you take the setback from the road, setback from the out at the property line and the highway, you got a triangle in there. All right, anything you did in that triangle is going to create more water on me because if you put a building there, the water's going to run off into the ditch around and come right through my building again. All right, so you can't use it for anything. You can't even put a parking lot on it, just put water in it. And what I'd like to do is get that triangle should be tax exempt. I mean, it doesn't do anything, but it catches rainwater and that's it. And that's my 3 things that I'm looking at on this thing. What I'm looking for, I'd like to see. I would like to see that triangle. Let's see if I can read this thing to you. I'd like to see that 0.987 acres be tax exempt because you can't do anything. Anything you do is going to create more flooding on me. And it uses service of water absorption is all it's good for. I would also request that the eastern half of my property be taxed a flood zone. I went when this first started and tried to get the county to tax this thing. I'm flooded more times than people in the flood zone. They would like to get a tax credit or a refund for the last 8 years of taxes But what I should have been taxed as a flood zone. I know technically I'm not in a flood zone, but if you flooded more times than people in the flood zone, you could assume that you was in a flood zone. Y'all got anybody got any questions? You was far away.
Mr.
If you
Chairman,
got any questions, let me know.
Mr. Chairman, you're muted.
Excuse me. Mr. Harper, we've got your testimony now and we've got your exhibits, and you asked if anybody had any questions. Let's see, Mr. Meeker has a opportunity to cross-examine you. And then after he does, you'll have a chance to do rebuttal evidence if you would like. So
Fine.
what we'll do now is Mr. Meeker, Mr. Harper is your witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Harper, I believe you said you'd been in business for 48 years at these two sites. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what are the nature of the businesses in the four different buildings? So two on one side and two on the other parcel.
Well, I do motorcycle and marine. I've got two buildings, like 3 units back here that I rent, and they're low rent people. They pay $800 a month. There's not a lot of money there. One's a car garage, and one does concrete work, one's a welder. And I've got a building that's the city electric and Fastenal I built. And I wanted to build another one. I'm saddled with this $32,000 tax burden I'm saddled with. I can't develop anything. I'm sitting there just trying to hold my breath, trying to keep my head above water.
Okay. And then in terms of one site is approximately 4.5 acres. Is that correct?
Well, it's the way they surveyed it. I'd say it's in two parts. We set the business apart from that because we have had to borrow money. We got a $40,000 note on this property just to keep the doors open.
Okay. Am I correct, though, that one parcel is approximately 4.5 acres and the other is approximately 1 acre?
That's correct.
Okay. In terms of your pictures, it shows water in the buildings. When were those pictures taken?
Do I?
Of the pictures that show water in one of the buildings, when were those pictures taken?
That's my show. That's my storeroom. That's one right here next to the highway. That's out of the one point something acre you got.
Okay. And when were those pictures taken?
I didn't understand.
Do you know when the pictures were taken?
Pictures were taken periodically along. Some of them have got dates on the bottom. I've been taking the last 8 years. We took pictures, and then when we got tired of it, when all this tax thing came up, I started taking more pictures. I've got pictures. If you look at the very back, the date on that first, when they first started putting in that sidewalk down there, it's going to be probably 8-10 years ago.
Okay. And in terms of the water coming off the site, you've complained to both the city and the county. Is that correct?
I've been to the county commissioners meeting twice, took them pictures, showed them everything.
Okay. And at some point, a drain was installed. Is that correct?
They did that about a year or two ago. You talking about drains? They tried 2 things. Neither one of them worked. If you look at those pictures, you see that piece of screen wire they've got, and you see that piece of black pipe sticking up out of the ground, and you see my mechanic down there standing beside that drain, that cast iron drain, that the grass, when they mowed the grass, it stopped that up, and that thing flooded like it always did. Then we got flooded this past summer.
Have you also taken steps to attempt to lessen the flooding?
I've done everything. I've diked up around the backside trying to keep the water out. Well, and keeping the water off of me, it put it off on the neighbors. And the neighbor, she's protesting to the Department of Transportation out here in Mills River. And that's when the county started doing something. But they go back there and they put it around, but it doesn't have any effect on everything. It's either the water going downhill. You got to face that. The water's either going to flood her or flood me. If I block it off on me, it's going to flood her, or vice versa.
Okay. Let me move to the question about the floodplain. I think you said that the area in question was not technically in a flood zone. Is that correct?
That's correct. They told me I could not be taxed as a flood zone, but I'm flooded more times than people in the flood zone.
And that's because you're not in a FEMA flood zone. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then in terms of the soils report, that parcel is one of the developed sites, is it not?
No, it's on that triangle. That soil is on that triangle. It'll show you, if you look at that report, it shows you a drawing, a diagram. It shows you exactly where that soil was taken, the samples were taken.
Okay.
Look at it. It'll show you that. Everybody got one of those. You should have one. Everybody should have one.
Is that between the power line and the road there?
Right, that's that triangle. It borders on the property line, the old Spartanburg Highway, and the high tension power line.
Okay, and so that's on one of the parcels that the county considers already developed. Is that correct?
No, yeah, that's not been developed. It never has been.
No, but I mean, the county does not treat that piece as excess land. It treats that piece of land as part of the developed parcel. Is that correct?
I don't understand. It's never been developed. We couldn't develop it.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
Okay, do we have, let's see, Mr. Harper, do you want to have some rebuttal evidence? If you do, and then we'll get that, and then we'll see if commissioners have
No,
questions.
when I get a soil sample of all of you, I sent 6 of those things. You should have from the engineering company. Now they went back and dug holes, and they will tell you that that's a very wet area back there. I've been back here and the sun shining, and you could get stuck in that place. It's for water absorption. And how they saying that engineer, you tell me the engineer that I can get that will do a soil sample to make you happy, I'll get them and I'll pay for another soil sample. You just tell me who it is. What do you want? If you don't believe it, we'll get somebody else.
Anything else, Mr. Harper?
No, I'm good. Fire away if you got any more questions. I just answered Mr. Meeker's questions. Who's next?
All right, do we have commissioners that have questions? Mr. Wheeler, Vice Chairman Wheeler.
Mr. Harper, in July, you wrote a letter to Mr. Pelfrey, who is the commission counsel, stating that you wanted a continuance at that time for 2 reasons. One was which we've already discussed, is your complaint to the appraisal board. The other was you were in the process of getting your own appraisal.
Let me answer that.
Okay,
Can I answer that?
sure. That's what I'm asking
All
you.
right,
Where are you
okay,
at
I'm
with that?
gonna answer that. I had an appraiser, and he was saying like he'd do a good job. He'd been appraising for 14 or 15 years. And everything was clicking along fine until he found out his appraisal was going up against another appraisal, and the appraisal board was gonna get involved. He backed out of this thing like I had a hot potato, and I don't know whether it's some kind of professional courtesy they got between appraisers, but he backed out. He won't think to do with it after he found that out. Now, the appraisal, to me, it is a kind of a tool that can be used for or against you. It's an opinion thing. And we can see, when you see this appraisal that you got here, that was opinion. Now that she's not going to bite the hand that feeds her. I don't know what the county tax people paid her for that appraisal. I bet it was up for $1,500 to $2,000.
All right, so thank you.
Okay, there are other questions from commissioners? I'm scanning the grid and I don't see any. All right, Mr. Harper, anything else before it becomes the county's time to have their say?
Go ahead with the county. I'm waiting to hear from him. I want an explanation about that sidewalk.
Okay, well, you have the opportunity to call him if you want to.
Well, you had somebody that was going to stand in for him. Who was that?
That's Mr. Hensley, I believe.
Since this thing first started, you said you had somebody that was going to stand in for, I think Jones is his name. Somebody's going to stand in for him.
Mr. Meeker, you want to clarify that?
Yes, Mr. Hensley can testify that Mr. Harper's complaint has been taken to the county commissioners and that they feel things have been dealt with properly. He's not an engineer per se, but Mr. Harper can describe any complaint he's got, and Mr. Hensley can describe the county's position, which is that things are in reasonable order.
Mr. Hensley, excuse me, Mr. Harper, do you want to call Mr. Hensley?
Sure. I'd like to have somebody to stand up and tell me about that sidewalk. I just want to hear it from somebody. I've been to 2 county commissioner meetings, 2 cities, and I've had nobody that wants to stand up and explain that sidewalk.
All right, well, you can call Mr. Hensley. Mr. Hensley, Mr. Harper wants to call you as a witness and ask you some questions. All right, Mr. Harper. Can you hear us, Mr. Hensley? Mr. Hensley, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you. Mr. Harper wants to call you as a witness and ask you some questions, okay?
Okay.
All right, Mr. Harper, he's available.
I'm gonna ask you one thing. The city of Hendersonville has got a paper on how to build a sidewalk. It's got every little detail you want about sidewalks. It tells about, you know, how much concrete and the shoulder and all that stuff is in this document. All right, now that second paragraph, it says clean and maintain existing storm drains. Why did you not do that when you put in that sidewalk back there behind the health department?
It's my understanding that all of these issues have been addressed with the city of Hendersonville, with their engineering department and with their staff, and that all these issues have been taken care of at that level.
Mr. Harper?
You got to be kidding me. I asked you a simple question on something else. Why would you build a sidewalk with no drainage? And another thing too, well, you got the natural flow of water. You're not supposed to block, you're a civil engineer, I presume. You're not supposed to block a natural flow of water. Everybody knows that. Water's been coming down that ditch on the right side of Old Spartanburg for over 150 years. Why did you block that?
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, once again, these issues were addressed with the city and the county engineers directly from Mr. Harper. And it is my understanding that all of these issues were addressed and that the city and county found no issues with what they had built there.
Mr. Harper, I think Mr. Hensley is the appraiser and is not the an engineer with either the city or the county, and his expertise is in appraising, I think.
Well, I'm still looking for somebody from the county. The county built that sidewalk and they blocked the natural flow of water. I mean, that's the thing, and you know you can't do it. And an engineer, any civil engineer, water drainage is a number one thing when he does any kind of an outdoor project. You got to consider water drainage. That's what you do. And going down there and blocking a ditch that's been there for 150 years, causing me flooding, is wrong. I mean, you're not supposed to do that. I mean, this is a civilized world.
Well, we have your testimony about it, but you've heard all that Mr. Hensley says he can tell you about it, but we understand what your testimony is. Other questions from commissioners? Don't see any. Mr. Harper, anything else from you?
No, I just the 3 things I'm looking for out of this meeting. I'd like to see that triangle back there. It be tax exempt, because you can't use it for anything. It's obviously it's nothing but for absorbing water. That's all it's good for. And I would like to see this half of the property here where I could be flooded as a tax zone. I mean, as a flood zone. And the values and stuff, which is going to be the value of this half of the property will be based on what they tax a flood zone for, which I don't know.
Well, let me ask you for clarification. We had where you signed what your contentions were for what those values should be. Now, what are you contending now? Is that still your contention as to what the values of those
Well,
two parcels?
not really. No, I'd rather, given a choice, I'd rather be taxed as a flood zone because it's going to be a better deal. I'm looking for the best deal.
Well, I don't think we have the power to to say you should be taxed as a flood zone. We can say whether or not that impacted the value of your property, but we can't put you in a flood zone.
I would like to go back and look at those numbers again and resubmit those numbers, if I could, please.
Well, we're not going to have a chance to do any additional evidence. I think you heard the numbers that were you submitted was 1,600 for the, excuse me, 1.6 million for the first parcel that the county had for 2,101,700, and you had 590,000 for the parcel they had at 898,000. So we have to have something to kind of get an idea of what your contentions is. We know.
Okay, well, we'll go with that, but the one thing about it I've had to add to this thing is that triangle back there. That shouldn't be any tax on that at all, because it can't be used for anything. And we haven't got back down to the real problem. Sooner or later, the county is gonna have to go back up there and dig up that stupid sidewalk and put the appropriate drainage in there. I mean, you can't just continue year after year after year to flood me out. But it ain't right. I mean, you people, y'all can control this thing, but you need to get the county, just go down there, dig that thing up and fix it like it was. It had a ditch down there for 150 years and they blocked it.
All right. If there's nothing else, then, Mr. Harper, we're going to hear from the county and Mr. Meeker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll call Kevin Hensley as our first witness. Mr. Hensley, could you state your name and business address for the record?
My name is Kevin Hensley, and did you say business address?
Yes.
200 North Grove Street, Hendersonville, North Carolina.
How are you employed at the present time?
I am the Assistant County Assessor.
Do you have certifications from the North Carolina Department of Revenue?
Yes, I am a certified real property appraiser too, with the North Carolina Department of Revenue. I'm a certified personal property appraiser 1. I'm certified assistant tax collector. I also hold a certification through the NCPMA as a mapper 1.
How many years' experience do you have in assessment of real property?
I have been appraising real property for tax purposes since June of 2014, and prior to that, I worked with an independent firm doing appraisals for about a year.
Mr. Chairman, we'd offer Mr. Hensley as an expert in the assessment of real property.
Mr. Chairman, you were muted when you were just talking.
Excuse me. Without objection, so admitted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hensley, is the year of revaluation issue in this case January 1, 2019?
Yes.
Let me ask that you look in the county exhibit book to Exhibit 1. And can you identify that as the property card for the first parcel, 1086 or 1086 Spartanburg Highway?
Yes, it is the property record card for 1086 Spartanburg Highway.
Does it show both commercial buildings and land at that site?
Yes,
And is it approximately 4.5 acres of land?
it is approximately 4.5 acres. Yes.
How is the land valued?
This land was valued using 2 separate land rates, one being commercial primary, the other being commercial residual. With those 2 land rates factored out, this land was valued at $8.47 a square foot.
Okay, and is the total value of the land $1,649,400?
Yes.
Please describe the building values.
There are 2 commercial buildings on the property. The one commercial building showing built in 1984 has an assessed value of $133,400. The second commercial building at 1013 Old Spartanburg Highway, built in 2000, shows an assessed value of $318,900.
Are these buildings and land assessed in accordance with the Henderson Value Schedule values?
Yes, both these buildings are assessed using Henderson County's adopted schedule of values.
Okay, and if I look at Exhibit 2, is that an aerial photo of the land in question?
Yes,
Okay, and the front part there on the big highway, is that the land that's more valuable on the site?
that is the land that we consider more valuable on this site as primary commercial land.
Okay, and then on the back part, is that the land that's less valuable?
Yes, the back portion of the property is what we have on is just commercial residual land that is on the back portion of the property.
And that has a value that is substantially less than the commercial primary, is that correct?
Yes,
Let me ask now that you return to Exhibit 5 as to the property located at 1108 Spartanburg Highway or 1108 Spartanburg Highway. Is that the second parcel at issue here?
yes.
Please describe for the commission how this parcel is valued.
The land is valued using the commercial primary rate as being road frontage at $12 a square foot with a total land value of $580,200.
Okay, and what about the buildings?
And there are, let's see, 2 commercial buildings showing on this property. One being at 1108 Spartanburg Highway, built in 1974 for an assessed value of $181,300. The other commercial building having no address assigned to it, built in 1995, assessed at $104,500. And
Okay,
those are assessed according to the schedule of values adopted by the Board of County Commissioners for the 2019 reappraisal.
okay, and it's the total assessment for that parcel, $898,000,
Yes,
and that's somewhat more than an acre of property fronting the Spartanburg Highway, is that correct?
yeah, it's approximately 1.1 acres.
Now, Mr. Hensley, Mr. Harper referred to 2 sales. First, in doing your assessment for January 1, 2019, did you consider sales before that date and not sales after that date?
And considering sales for the January 1, 2019 reappraisal, we could only consider sales that happened prior to January 1 of 2019.
Okay, and on the first comparable that Mr. Harper referred to, that shows a land value of $1,045,000 and then it says a bought price of $835,000. Do you see that?
Yes.
And what was the date of that sale?
The date of that sale was 3/6 of 2020.
So that was then after the assessment date, is that correct?
That was after the assessment date, yes.
So this is one of the sales that you would not typically consider, is that correct?
This would be a sale that would not be considered in the assessment of Mr. Harper's property for the 2019 reappraisal.
Did you also have occasion to look into the sale to see whether it might have been distressed?
Yes, we did look at this sale at the point in time at which it did sell. We did disqualify this based on it being a distressed sale.
Okay, and what was the nature of the distress?
This property was being held through an estate transfer from 2017, and it was held by a widow and a tenant in common and was not on the open market for sale. So we consider that a distressed sale.
Okay, and on the second sale mentioned by Mr. Harper in his materials, is that the Justice Business Center in Flat Rock, North Carolina?
Yes.
And about how far away is that?
That property is approximately 1.5 miles away from Mr. Harper's property.
Okay, and what was the date of this sale?
The date of that sale was 3/27/2020.
So that was also a year or so after the assessment date?
That was, yes, absolutely.
And did you find additional information about this sale?
We looked into this sale and it seemed that this property was a transaction between 2 business entities that appear to have same ownership.
Okay, so that would not be a qualified sale, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, in terms of the discussion of the soil, is that soil in question some of the land that's near the smaller road that was considered residual property as opposed to the commercial primary?
Yes, the portion of the land that's in question, the triangle, as Mr. Harper calls it, is the land that we do consider to be the residual land that is much lesser value than commercial primary.
Okay, so it's not the land that's fronting a Spartanburg Highway that's considered excess land is valued separately. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, finally, in terms of the flood plain issue, is it correct that these parcels are not in the floodplain as mapped by FEMA?
It is correct that these parcels are not in the floodplain.
Has anything in Mr. Harper's testimony today or before changed your opinion as to the correct assessment of these properties?
No,
Do you believe the properties to be correctly assessed as shown on exhibits 1 and 5 in the county's exhibit book?
yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
Mr. Chairman, you're muted.
Mr. Harper, you have the opportunity now to cross-examine Mr. Hensley about his testimony about his opinion of the value the county assigned to the property.
Well, when he assigned the value to my property, since he's an appraiser, I would like to know the comps used and where the comps were that he determined the value of this property at his first appraisal.
Mr. Hensley?
1325 Spartanburg Highway, 1191 Spartanburg Highway, 1515 Spartanburg Highway, 1171 Spartanburg Highway. Those are the four comps that were used in valuing Mr. Harper's property.
Did you get those, Mr. Harper?
Yeah, well, he answered my question. I don't know where these places are, but I guess I don't remember that many sales taking place out here myself.
Well, you can ask him about them if you want to.
Yeah, I would. I'd like a little more about the sales. Can you name the people that own the property? That I know her, I've been out here for 40-something years. I know everybody. I'd kind of like to know where these, you gave the addresses, but I'd like to know who it was that sold, but I didn't know that much of that property had been sold out here. I know everything out here now's got a for sale sign on it.
I have the current properties or the current owners of the property as of now.
Okay.
1325 Spartanburg Highway is property owner JBC eGolf Properties LLC. 1191 Spartanburg Highway, property owner Bain Holdings LLC. Property at 1515 Spartanburg Highway is property owner is Brian Easler Enterprises Incorporated.
Right.
Property at 1171 Spartanburg Highway, property owner King Van Kirk Properties LLC. All of these happened within the last reappraisal cycle before January 1st of 2019.
Well, you've enlightened me.
All right. Other questions of Mr. Hensley, Mr. Harper?
I would like to have one more question.
Okay.
I would like for you, since you're the appraiser, I would like for you to come out and appraise my business side over here, this half that I'm trying to get some kind of a break on, and tell me what I've got to do. I can't afford the $32,000 and be flooded out 2 or 3 times a year. It costs me too much money. I would like to know what I can do to get this tax reduced down to some kind of a livable rate, and I have to live with this flooding. What do I got to do? I can't afford it.
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that question. I'm not a tax attorney, nor do I give tax representation to taxpayers. I'm not real sure. We have awarded Mr. Harper any avenues that he would have available as a taxpayer in Henderson County.
All right. Mr. Harper, any other questions of Mr. Hensley?
Nope.
Okay, questions of commissioners, Mr. Hensley? Let me ask this, Mr. Hensley, he's talked about the flooding, issue. Can you speak to, if the flooding issue has been, examined and it is part of the appraisal of this property?
So upon first appraisal of this property for the 2019 reappraisal, we did have a higher value on Mr. Harper's property. Upon initial appeal, that's when we dropped the land rate from $12 to $8.47 a square foot, actually reducing Mr. Harper's value by $687,200. We recognize some of the portions on the backside of the property with the power lines and zoning restrictions of being able to build back there. That is the reason that we put that on as residual land. As far as the actual flooding issues, the only thing that we've seen to memorialize the flooding issues are pictures that we don't know when the pictures were taken.
Okay,
Some of those pictures were taken this year. I've been taking pictures along for all these years. You tell me when you want a picture taken, what I'll do next time I'm flooded, I'll call you and you come out here and take your own picture.
all right, Mr. Harper, what, we can probably get into that maybe a little bit later, but, you'll have to see that. If you have another question, you can ask him, but, otherwise we need to get back to, Mr. Meeker. You heard him say that he had made an adjustment for the residual land. And
Well, I know about all that. I just want to know what my total tax pay is. But you're trying to bill me for $32,000 a year now. What's it gonna be after you get through these adjustments?
well, you'll have to look at that going forward. We're only doing with this tax appeal for the tax year 2019 right now. Okay, Mr. Meeker.
Our next witness will be Terry Patton.
Ms. Patton, you've been sworn, so Mr. Meeker, go ahead.
Yes, Ms. Patton, will you please state your name and business address for the record?
Yes, Terry Patton, 196 Sweetwater Lane, Pisgah Forest, North Carolina, 28768.
How are you employed at the present time, Ms. Patton?
I have my own business. It's WNC Appraisal Services.
If I could ask the commission to turn to Exhibit 3, page 97. Ms. Patton, if you can go there also. Does that page and the following pages describe your qualifications and experience?
Yes.
And could you just summarize those quickly for the commission, including your licensing?
Sure. I started appraising in 2006, and I've been a full-time appraiser since then. I focus on commercial real estate with a primary coverage area of Western North Carolina. I became fully licensed in 2008, state certified general appraiser, and then started my appraisal firm in 2009. And then since then, just continued my education and specialized experience, and was able to obtain a couple of designations through the Appraisal Institute, and and now we're here today.
Ms. Patton, are you licensed as an appraiser of real property in North Carolina?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd offer Ms. Patton as an expert in the appraisal of real property located in Western North Carolina.
Okay, Mr. Harper, Mr. Meeker has offered Ms. Patton as an expert in appraisals in Western North Carolina. Do you have any objection?
Whatever she says.
Okay, so she's deemed admitted as an expert in appraising Western North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Patton, if I could ask that you turn to the second and third pages, the cover sheets or the cover letter of your appraisal. Can you describe the value conclusion that you've arrived at for 1086 Spartanburg Highway?
Sure. The final reconciled value I have is $2,020,000.
Okay, and on the fourth page of the appraisal, this is unnumbered, where it says summary of important conclusions. Could you describe the valuations procedures that you used?
Yes, I utilized all three approaches to value. So we have a cost approach, a sales approach, and the income capitalization approach.
And then those three were reconciled to $2,020,000, is that correct?
Correct.
Let me ask that you turn now to the numbered pages of your appraisal and go to numbered page 4, where it shows an aerial photo of this parcel. And that is 7 or 8 pages back in the appraisal. Do you have that?
Yes.
Okay, on the excess land, could you describe to the commission what that is?
Yes, so that's, I measured it out to be 1.56 acres that has frontage along the 5 lanes Spartanburg Highway. Good piece of land.
Okay, and that is then treated separately from building 1 and building 2, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, what is building 1?
Building 1 is, well, it's a 2-tenant industrial building.
Okay, and building 2?
That is like a commercial service, older commercial service building.
Okay, and there's a piece of undeveloped property between the structure on building 2 and the smaller road, is that correct?
Yes.
Have you treated that land as part of the building 2 site without intention to develop it further?
Yes, that land is considered surplus land. It was just added into building 2's building to land ratio. There's no excess land valuation there. It's only surplus.
Okay, and is that where the soils issue that Mr. Harper has talked about exists?
Yes.
Let me ask that you turn to page 22 of your appraisal and describe the first building in a little more detail.
Okay. So the first building I measured out is 11,250 square feet. It's built in year 2000. I have estimated an effective age of 15 years.
Okay, and the second building on page 23?
The second building was the multi-tenant service garage building, measured out at 7,200 square feet, built in 1984, effective age of 25 years.
Okay, and if you could turn to page 40, is that where you start the cost approach in your appraisal?
Yes.
And is the first thing you looked at is the cost or value of the land, is that right?
Correct.
And if you turn to page 44, does that show your land sales analysis chart?
Yes.
Okay, and on page 47, is that where you reach your land value conclusion?
Correct.
And what is that for these parcels? That is not the excess land, but the building 1 and building 2 sites.
Right. So my conclusion was $3.44 a square foot for that land. 220,000 for each side.
Okay, and that is a good deal less than the excess land we're going to look at in a minute. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's because of the frontage of the major highway. Is that right?
Yes.
Let me ask that you turn to pages 49 and 50. If you could describe what is shown there in terms of your cost approach.
Sure. So I valued building 1 first as an industrial flex building. It's a class S building, which is a prefab metal building. And then it's depreciated based on a 15-year effective date. Let's see, we had some asphalt paving and some landscaping added in. With the site value, it came in at $830,900. And then
Okay,
building
and
2.
what about building? Yes, please do building 2.
Building 2, service repair garage was the occupancy. Again, it was a class S building, depreciated based on effective age of 25 years. And that one came in at $357,246.
Okay, the total of those 2 structures without the excess land we're going to get to in just a minute was how much?
Total for the two that is a rounded figure of 1,190,000.
Okay, let me ask that you turn now to page 51. Is that where you start your sales comparison approach?
Yes.
And how does that work?
So I did each building separately. That's because they have a little bit different economic characteristics. So we have comparable sales for building 1 first. There were 4 that I located in the area that have similar characteristics as building 1. And those
that
were
shown
adjusted
on-
on
Is that
page
shown on
56.
page 56?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, and what's your conclusion of value as shown on page 62 of building 1?
So that came in at $67 a square foot. For that building size of 11,250, we have a rounded value of 750,000 for building 1.
Okay, and did you use the same approach on building number 2?
I did.
And on page 72, what is your conclusion as to building number 2?
That is $52 a square foot, 7,200 square feet. So around a total of 370 for building 2.
Okay, on the 2 buildings together, was that 1,120,000 as shown on page 72?
Correct.
Okay, and starting on page 73, is that your income capitalization approach?
It is.
Okay, and turning to page 80, is that a chart that is shown there in terms of the various incomes?
Yes, those were comparable leases that I used.
Okay, and turning to page 85, what is shown there?
So 85 shows the total income pro forma for buildings 1 and 2 at 1086 Spartanburg Highway.
And what is the total for that?
That came in at 990,000.
Okay, so we have the cost approach, the sales approach, and income approach for the 2 buildings. Do you then do the excess land next?
Yes.
Does that start on page 86?
Yes.
And I think we mentioned before, this land is a good deal more valuable because it fronts on the major highway. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it's approximately 1.5 acres. Is that right?
It is.
And what is your value conclusion as shown on page 94 for the excess land?
The excess land, I'm showing a value of $13.51 a square foot, which equates to around a total of 920,000.
Okay, and then on page 95, do you put the improved areas together with the excess land?
Yes.
And that shows your 3 approaches. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then the total reconciled value is 2,020,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's for the 4.5 acres, including the 4 buildings and the excess land. Is that correct?
It's two buildings in the excess land.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Now we've been through in some detail your first appraisal. Turning to Exhibit 7, is that your appraisal of 1108 or 1108 Spartanburg Highway?
Yes.
And is the same approach used on this second appraisal as you used on your first in terms of using all 3 methods of valuation?
Yes, all 3 are used again.
And did you look at the cost approach, the sales comparison approach, and the income approach for those this parcel?
Yes.
Okay, and turning to page 72, does that show your value conclusion for this parcel and the improvements on it?
Yes, the correlation of values.
Okay, and the cost approach is 990,000, is that correct?
Yes.
And your sales comparison is 910,000, is that right?
Correct.
And the income approach is 920,000, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and the reconciled value you have is 930,000, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, in terms of the power line or the excess or surplus land in the back, we've talked about that as being included as part of building 2, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Harper made some comments about the general market in the area, that everything was for sale and that kind of thing. What is your opinion of the market as of January 1, 2019?
My opinion is quite different from Mr. Harper's. I feel like that area is growing. You know, there's
Oh, shit.
thriving car dealerships in the
Mr.
area.
Harper? Mr. Harper, you'll have a chance to cross-examine her, so let's keep your comments to yourself.
Please go ahead, Ms. Patton.
So there's various retail commercial uses in that area. Spartanburg Highway has a traffic count of about 22,000 vehicles per day. So it's in my opinion, I'm from that area. I feel like it's a very, very healthy market.
Okay, and you said there are car dealerships in the area?
Yeah, there's 3 major car dealerships in, I would think maybe a 3-mile radius or so. Of course, there's the social services building right adjacent to Mr. Harper's property. It's 100,000 square feet. So there's quite a bit of things going on there. Lease rates, I've witnessed lease rates increasing over the years. January 1st, 2019 was a healthy market for that area.
Okay. In terms of the flooding that Mr. Harper has referenced, how did that affect your appraisal?
Well, I didn't notice any flooding when I was out on the day of inspection. I didn't notice any drainage issues, although I'm not an expert. He did supply me with some older photos of where it did flood, but based on my research, I couldn't make any adjustments for something like that. I don't feel like the typical investor would have adjusted for it for any type of cost to cure.
Do property owners typically take care of nuisance flooding from a sidewalk or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, and in terms of the 2 sales referenced by Mr. Harper, both those were after January 1, kind of 2019. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you have a chance to look at those sales to see if that would have any impact on your appraisals?
I did look at them once I saw them come through. I don't have any details about those transactions, but one was multifamily with some mobile homes and such. So it wouldn't, well, neither would have been comparable to these properties. So I don't, and honestly, I didn't have any details. They were both from a local investor that owns quite a few properties in the area. I wouldn't have been surprised if they were not arm's length.
Okay. Have any of the points that Mr. Harper has made changed your opinion of value as to these 2 parcels?
No.
And then finally, other than the complaint filed by Mr. Harper, have you ever received a complaint before as to your appraisal work?
No.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Harper, now you have a chance to cross-examine Ms. Patton.
First thing I want to know, how many appraisals have you done for any county tax collector? How many appraisals have you done for them? Henderson County or any other county?
I haven't really done too many tax appraisals. I think Henderson County, I've done 4, 4 in total. And 2 of them were yours.
All right, on your opinion, I look at this opinion in here, and you mentioned some stuff. Once you cross that bridge up there, you're going into 176 East, you make a statement in here about the grocery store chain. There's no grocery store chain out here, you know that. And you go in there, you're talking about drugstores. There's no drugstores out here. They're back on next to town on the 176 West. You keep exaggerating things.
Mr. Harper, ask her a question rather than.
Well, I'm asking her a question.
Okay.
Why did you put this thing about grocery store chains when you know there's none out here?
Well, I'm not separating Spartanburg Highway the way you did because I don't see it the way you do. If you look at the published data for the North Carolina Department of Transportation, there's less than a 10% difference in traffic volume between before the bridge and after the bridge. So, the grocery store chains are before the bridge or however you want to look at it, but I'm not seeing any major difference between the 2 areas.
When you're appraising, you are supposed to appraise this land on this lot, on this address, not somewhere else out in Never Never Land. And I notice here another thing I don't understand is why the county appraiser used 4 comps on this road. why did you, on your comps, you got one out here in Arden, and you got one out in Fletcher? Well, that's not, how can you use an area out there as a comp for this? How you do that? And you come up with these small comps like you got a 0.19 in town. If you're appraising 4 acres, you should use a comparable amount of acreage in a general area. But you failed to do that. But the county did. I don't know what the difference is one way or another. I just made my observation. You did one thing and he did something else.
Well, ask her a question, Mr. Harper.
Well,
if
why'd
got
you
one.
do? Why was your appraisal different from the other, from the Henderson County tax appraisal? Why would you do it in a different way? Why would you use different comps than what he used?
Well, the county is appraising based on mass appraisal, so that's very different than what I did. I was able to pull individual comps that I feel that were the best suited to compare it to your property. So we have different approaches when we value properties, and I did value your property as, you know, as individual. And, you know, I went through my sources and was able to find the best land comparables, improved comparables, lease comparables. Those were the best available, and that's why I used them in the report.
Well, my battery's getting low here. I'm gonna try to get plugged in and continue. I don't know how long this is gonna go. It says 10% battery remaining.
All right, well, let's, as soon as you finish cross-examining her, we'll maybe take a short recess and you can get your battery plugged in.
Well, I'm gonna try to get plugged in. But I'm gonna make a statement, ask her a question. As you go out 176, it should become painfully obvious to you that when you cross that railroad bridge, you're in another world. You're in a place where we got a Burger King and a Mexican restaurant out here. And we got a bunch of closed up empty buildings and warehouses with parks in there. Now you've got to know as an appraiser the difference between east and west of that bridge. And how you could even connect the two of them, I don't understand. Can you explain that?
I mean, I agree. There's a Burger King before the bridge, but there's 3 dealerships after the bridge. So again, I guess I respectfully disagree that it's a different market.
Well, you've got a closed up dealership. You talk about your one dealership is closed. And then you got a bank that's closed. And, I mean, what does it take? And then you've got these old warehouse buildings. There's a garage over there with that black and white door on it, and it's closed. I mean, what does it take for you to understand that this area is a depressed area? It's not a blooming area like you described.
Again, I disagree. I have lots of data proving that it is not a depressed area. Lease rates have gone up over the years. Prices are going up. I mean, the dealerships are thriving. I don't know what dealership closed, but there's Boyd Chevrolet, there's a Nissan, there's Toyota. I mean, how could you justify that those are there and
You get the
right
one
near your property?
across the street from Nissan's closed. They tried to sell Mitsubishi in there and they closed. The Nissan dealership is under pressure right now because it was sold because it wasn't making any money and it's changed hands. And go look, if you want to come out here and go down the road, I will show
Mr.
you, and you can
Harper,
look at the for sale signs.
Mr. Harper, you'll
I
have a
mean,
chance, but you need to ask questions. Your portion right now is not testifying, but is to ask cross-examination.
okay, all right.
And you'll have a chance. All right.
Well, let me hook in my battery and try to get this thing going again. Well, I'm plugged in my charger, but it doesn't seem to be doing anything.
Okay. Well, let me ask Mr. Meeker, how many more witnesses do you have?
We do not have any, Mr. Chairman. That concludes the county's case.
Okay. All right, Mr. Harper, if you're through examining Ms. Patton, then we're through with the county's evidence. And is there anything else you want us to hear from you about?
Well, the only thing I'd like to see is somebody.
We're going to
some
give you
one
a chance to
time-
make a closing argument. You'll have a
Okay,
chance to make a
nothing
closing
else.
argument, and the
Nothing
county
else,
will
go
as
ahead.
well.
I only got one comment to make in closing, that's it.
All righty. Well, let's go ahead then, and we'll, since there's no further testimony, we've got all the exhibits in except for the soil report. And Mr. Meeker, I believe you objected to that, although we've talked about it. Do you want to keep it out?
I think probably so. I mean, I don't think it's a major point,
Okay.
but we've talked about it.
All right, we'll exclude the soil report. We've had pretty much testimony about that area. Okay, then, Mr. Harper, do you want to go first, or do you want the county to go first with your closing argument?
Well, this whole thing, the bigger part of this thing revolves around that stupid sidewalk back there. And I can't get an answer from, you got an appraiser, but we need to get an engineer to explain to us about that sidewalk. That sidewalk doesn't go anywhere. It's the only sidewalk on that road, on Old Spartanburg Highway. It only goes from one side of their property to the other and causes me all kinds of money and grief and flooding. And I can't get any relief from the tax people. I can't get any relief from nobody. And nobody wants to come up and see when they're gonna fix the dadgum ditch. Just put it back like they're supposed to. That's about all I got to say.
Mr. Chairman, you are muted.
Excuse me, Mr. Meeker, my fingers, my eyes are not going down to my mute button today for some reason. Mr. Meeker, we'll hear from you in closing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me thank the commission for hearing this case. Henderson County does request that its assessments on these two parcels be affirmed. One assessment is $2,101,700. The other parcel is $898,000. Both appraisals are within 5% of those assessments. The first one is a little bit less at $2,020,000. The other one's a little bit more at $930,000. We do request that the assessments be affirmed. If the commission would prefer, the appraisals, of course, are very similar, all within 5%, actually 3.5% or 4%. Here, all the valuation testimony has come from the county, from Mr. Hensley, an expert in assessment, and from Ms. Patton, an expert in real property appraisal. Mr. Harper did not present an appraiser, although he apparently looked at one, and has not presented any valuation testimony really at all in this case, other than a form filed at the start of the case. So we feel that the assessment and the appraisals speak for themselves, and they are the greater weight of the evidence, and that the county method has not been shown to be improper, or the valuation substantially exceeds true value. In terms of the issues in this case, Mr. Harper seems to raise 3 or 4 issues. One is about some soils that may be full on the back side of one of the buildings over near the smaller road. That site is not being used, nor is it valued as though it's going to be used for anything other than just a vacant parcel. So that soil issue does not affect the land. It's not part of the excess land that does have real value, because the excess land is on the front of near the highway. Second, in terms of the power line on the back, that's been taken into account. On the flooding question, that's the main thing we've heard about. That kind of issue, I'm sure, is very frustrating to Mr. Harper, and it ought to be resolved. The Hendersonville and the county apparently feel that they've done what they should do there, and that issue has been taken to them. Typically, a landowner resolves those issues with some cure on the site. This is not something that should have a long-term or permanent impact on the site, and indeed, it does not cause it to become a flood zone under FEMA, or become exempt or something else like that. I sympathize with Mr. Harper, and that's one of those issues that I think that does need to be dealt with, or I don't think that this body is the one to deal with that. Either that would be something with with a contention that something's been done wrong, and addressing it with the county or the city or whoever's involved. And then finally, the general market. I know Mr. Harper has one view of it. Ms. Patton has another view, that this road with its very substantial traffic and with the development nearby, is a good market and supports what's in her appraisal as well as what's in the assessments. So we think for all those reasons that what Mr. Harper's presented has not shown that the assessments are arbitrary or illegal, or that they exceed true value. For that reason, we do request that the assessments be affirmed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Meeker. Before we go into executive session, let me ask, any commission members have anything else they want to ask? All right, I don't see any. All right, we will recess and go into executive session, and then we will get back with you as soon as we reach some kind of decision in this matter.
Will you
Yes, Mr.
call me,
Harper.
or how am I going?
Well, we're going to be right back. You
Yeah.
just hang on. We're going to give you something. We normally are able to resolve these after we've had a chance to discuss it. So we should be back in touch with you, and we'll just have a recess until we're ready to come back. We'll probably let everybody have
Why
a
don't
chance to go to the restroom.
Give me a time when you'll be back, and I'm gonna cut this thing off and let the battery charge.
Okay. I suspect, what time is it now? It's almost
Quarter after
3:15.
3.
We should be back, I would think, around 3:45.
3:45, 30 minutes. All right. Thank
All
you.
right.
See you then.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Bendette.
And the witnesses back over as panelists I can.
That's probably okay. They can hear, I think, so as long as they can hear. Mr. Hensley, you can hear okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Harper, Mr. Meeker, the commission has deliberated based upon the testimony of Mr. Harper and the county's witness and the examination of all the exhibits and the arguments that were made. And the commission has ruled unanimously that we will uphold the county's value as to each parcel. Mr. Harper, you've done a good job in trying to point out some of your contentions. Sounds like from what we heard, the county's probably taken into consideration the triangle area, and it's been substantially reduced as far as the other property. The flooding issue is a harder one for us to deal with, and that may be something you want to continue to work with the county on. You'll get a written opinion that should come out within about 90 days. That'll be sent to everyone. That will set out the opinion, and in that we'll set out the basis of that opinion. And it'll also, you'll get a letter that will set out your appeal rights, so that if you desire to appeal, that will explain that part of it to you as well. That's all we have. Any of the other commissioners? Well, let's see. We need to probably stay on and go over tomorrow's calendar a little bit, maybe the calendar for the rest of the week if the commissioners.
Can I make one more comment after?
Yes, sir, Mr. Harper, sure.
All this is well and good, but the one guy that I wish we could have had on there, I'm sorry that his mother died. I really am. But Marcus Jones is the guy that built the sidewalk. He's the very guy that stood back there at that pipe and said he did not mean for that drain going under the county to handle DOT water. Well, he's the guy that built the sidewalk that ran the water in there that caused the problem in the first place. And I just hate that I'd wanted to hear what he had to say. That's all. I'm sorry. That's it
Well, I
for me.
understand that, and you may want to continue your discussions with him and with the county and see if anything can be done about that issue.
Been 8 years now. I don't think they're gonna do anything now.
Well, sometimes you got to keep trying and being pleasantly assertive, and
When the chairman of the
maybe
county
something will
commission
happen.
won't even return your call. You know?
Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Harper, thank you, and Mr. Meeker and your witnesses. we appreciate y'all appearing before us today. Let me go ahead and talk briefly about the calendar tomorrow and
Well, thank all of you. I'm gonna be parting. It's
Okay.
a new experience for me. But thank you.
okay, thank you, Mr. Harper.
And I'll do the same, Mr. Chairman. Thanks so much.
The
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Mr. Chairman, while you're looking, do you want to remain on the record for this or to remain streaming?
It doesn't matter. I'm just going to go over the calendar for the rest of the week. There were some changes recently. Tomorrow we have 3 motions to consider. One of them is a motion to reconsider, and then 2 motions to dismiss from Mecklenburg County. And then we had about, I don't know, 10 or 12 cases from Mecklenburg. A lot of them were related, and all of those, in all cases from Mecklenburg that were on for tomorrow, I think have been settled. Maybe, yep, I think a couple of them might have been withdrawn, but they're all gone, except for those motions. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, that's correct. And actually, I found out this afternoon that the Cato matter has been resolved, and that motion will come off the calendar for tomorrow.
Okay, so we'll have one motion to reconsider, and then we'll have one motion to dismiss tomorrow. Wednesday, we had a case in Guilford County. That case was settled. We had 1, 2, 3, 4 cases from Wake County. Actually, we had 5. One of them had been withdrawn, but we had 4 that were scheduled to be heard tomorrow. Mr. Ken Murphy is the Wake County attorney, and he had a death, and his wife, I think it was his wife's father, passed away, and he asked for a continuance in those cases, and we agreed to continue those cases. There was also a case in Randolph County that's been settled. Steve informs me that there's been some, I think some new directives come in or information from the Department of Revenue. And I think, Steve, you indicated that we could have a session on Wednesday regarding that. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, sort of. There's not anything that would necessarily require the commission to meet on Wednesday, but there is annual required security training that has been released today, and my understanding is that we can message so that you can do that. It should take about an hour, and that's something that would be a useful thing for Wednesday. And again, the commission could meet if you'd like, but that's really up to you. And we'll work on getting that information to everybody.
Okay, if you'll get that to us, let's go ahead and we'll convene. I don't know that anything else will be happening. We can talk about it some more tomorrow, and we'll see what we've got that we can use Wednesday for that training session. And then we got an administrative session we'll be doing. All right, we'll see y'all in the morning, 9 o'clock. Thanks.